I'm Tad Flaky,
I'm Lilibet Flaky.
and this is Pointless Global News. On today's show, it's a fashion trend. Chimps at Zambia are sticking grass and sticks in their butts.
Then, a giant beaver is named the official state fossil of Minnesota.
Finally, balls out bowling in the nude comes to Pittsburgh. Now the details. A group of chimpanzees in Zambia have resurrected an old-fashioned trend with a surprising new twist. 15 years ago, after a female chimpanzee named Julie first stuck a blade of grass into her ear and started a hot new craze among her cohort at the Chimpanzee Wildlife Orphanage, an entirely new group of chimps at the refuge have started doing the same thing. We were really shocked that this had happened again, said Jake Brooker, a psychologist and great apes researcher at Durham University in England. He went on to say, we were even more shocked that they were doing their own spin on this by also inserting grass and sticks into different orifices. The chimps, he says, have been putting blades of grass and sticks in their ears and anuses and simply letting them dangle there for no apparent reason. The study sheds new light on how social, cultural trends spread and change among our primate cousins, much like they do among humans. In fact, the researchers suspect the chimps learned the behavior from people. The ear part, that is. The two groups of chimps who display the behavior don't have any contact with each other, but they do share the same human caretakers. And those caretakers, the study notes, reported that they sometimes use matchsticks or blades of grass to clean their ears when working at the animal sanctuary. The chimps, Brooker says, have potentially copied it from a human who was walking by the enclosure or one of the caregivers who was just going about their daily lives. Like all cultures, things change over time, and they get refined, and new quirks and new traditions pop up. In this case, the team traced the new quirk to a male chimp named Juma, who seems to have originated the grass and butt variation. Of course, it's a man. From there, the study shows it spread rapidly to most of his group mates within a week. The same thing happened to Julie's group. She started putting grass in her ear back in 2010, and pretty soon, 7 other chimps were doing the same thing. The phenomenon continued after Julie died in 2013. The researchers observed Julie's group again for this new study and found that 2 chimps, including Julie's son, were still wearing grass in their ears. Much like humans, Brooker says the chimps appear to be willing to suffer for the sake of fashion. You see, when they're learning this behavior that it's quite uncomfortable, he said of the ear grass, they shake their head and they rub their ear a little bit as if they're trying to get used to it. Once they adjust, he says, they appear to be largely unbothered. He likened it to people getting their ears pierced. There's not a clear benefit to wearing earrings, really, but some kind of social cultural reason, perhaps. I feel it's very similar to this grass in the ear bit. It's an apt comparison, says Julie Tycrobe, a primatologist at the University of Toronto who was not involved in the study. It just looks like an earring, like a fashionable way to present yourself. And as for Juma's grass and butt variation, Tycrobe says it's possible they're doing it to make themselves more attractive to potential mates. Females in particular, she noted, display swelling at their rear ends to indicate that they're receptive to a little hanky-panky. They spend a lot of time looking at each other's butts, she said. So it's really not that surprising that they were innovating this way to sort of decorate their butts. Cultural differences are common among primates and other animals too, but they often boil down to different methods of accessing food and other resources. Because the chimpanzee chimps have human caretakers who feed them, Tycrobe says, they may have more free time to develop purely social trends. We think of like silly little pointless cultural ideas that spread amongst people. Learning that animals have these kinds of same pointless little behaviors that become fads and become viral, I think it really shows just how closely related we are to them and how much kinship we actually share. Brooker says it reminds him of the orcas who have recently been spotted wearing salmon on their heads like hats, a behavior that was last reported back in the 70s. It reemerged 40 years later, just like flared jeans. And now here's Lilibet with the latest on the beaver beat.
Yes, I've been chasing down the news in the closest beaver dam. It's official. Minnesota's state fossil is the giant beaver, an extinct creature the size of a small bear that roamed around the Twin Cities more than 10,000 years ago. Lawmakers had approved the new state fossil earlier this year as part of a broader omnibus bill, which Governor Tim Walz signed into law in May. The bill, which included a short provision about the gargantuan Ice Age rodent, officially took effect July 1st. Minnesota now has a state constellation too, Ursa Minor, also known as the Little Dipper. Minnesota has a deep connection to beavers. From our modern ecosystems to our prehistoric past, Alex Hastings, a paleontologist at the Science Museum of Minnesota, said in a May statement. The giant beaver fossil specimens in our collection have long captivated visitors of all ages, making this massive Ice Age mammal the perfect symbol of our state's ancient natural history. The giant beaver's journey to becoming Minnesota's state fossil has been a long and winding one. The saga dates back to at least 1988, when a group of third graders first proposed making the massive mammal the official state fossil. Since then, the proposal has come up again and again. Each time, lawmakers have said no, but that changed this year. Giant beavers were aquatic animals that lived during the Pleistocene. They probably looked and acted a lot like today's beavers, but they grew to much larger proportions. The prehistoric rodent of unusual size could reach 7 feet long and weigh more than 200 pounds. Fossil hunters have discovered nearly complete remains of the species in Minneapolis and St. Paul and uncovered fossils in Freeborn County, which is located in the southern part of the state near the border with Iowa. What's really fun about the giant beaver is that it would have actually been around when the first people were settling into Minnesota, Hastings said back in February. So the first inhabitants in this land would have been encountering the giant beaver. This spring, lawmakers once again took up the issue, hearing testimony from experts in the Science Museum of Minnesota and the Bell Museum on the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus in St. Paul. Both institutions have giant beaver fossils in their collections. One animal that gets the biggest wow from our Bell Museum visitors is not the life-size woolly mammoth, but the giant beaver presented as a life-size model on a glacier, alongside a jaw fossil collected from Blaine, said Holly Menninger, executive director of the Bell Museum. Lawmakers were finally convinced. While debating other important issues like the state budget and fraud mitigation, they agreed to make the giant beaver the state fossil. It's still a good time to remember our history and what we think is important to the state, Jim Abler, a state senator from Anoka, Minnesota, said in the proceedings. If you were going to have a state fossil, you'd want to have something as cool as the giant beaver.
Any other thoughts on this?
No, I am not thinking. I know beaver jokes. I'm not going there.
I don't blame you. Okay, finally, a Pennsylvania naturism group announced the return of Balls Out Bowling, an annual bowling event where clothing is not allowed. The Pittsburgh area naturalists announced this year's Balls Out Bowling event will take place on Saturday at Pittsburgh's Crafton Ingram Lanes, so you still have time to get there on Saturday. Admission to the annual event is $30, which includes 4 hours of unlimited bowling and shoe rental. The group said the only clothing allowed for attendees are shoes, which are required, and optional bottoms for women. Please bring a towel and a bag for your belongings, the event page states. The group said all participants must be at least 18 years old, and all genders, sexualities, and bodies are welcomed. No photos or videos are allowed during the event. Sexual activity is not permitted. Nudism is not equal consent, and harassment will not be taken lightly. Violators will be asked to leave.
Some people need to get a life. Really, do you need to bowl nude? One errand ball. One ball. You got to remember which balls you're playing with, too.
Yes.
That's all I have to say.
And you don't want to get too clung to that machine that cleans the bowling balls.
This is true.
Yeah, especially if you're a man. Anyway, that's a wrap for another Pointless Global News. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Tad Flakey.
I'm Lilibet Flakey.
Stay pointless, my friend.